Around April of last year, Tesla started delivering a limited number of Gigafactory Texas-built Model Ys that were equipped with 4680 batteries and structural battery packs, and these deliveries started with employees, and then it was broadened out to a limited number of non-employees. However, this 279-mile Model Y all-wheel drive variant was never added to the Tesla design studio, so it's not something that customers could go right now and order. And it seems like customers that did get this Model Y, it was done by invitation from Tesla. Customers that had an existing order in the system, and Tesla reached out to them to see if they wanted this new 279-mile variant. Though it looks like that's about to change because, as this Electrek article recently pointed out, the 279-mile all-wheel drive variant now appears in the back-end source code of the Model Y design studio. As of the recording of this video, Tesla has not yet flipped the switch on the front end to make this visible to customers, so you can't quite order this model on their website. However, now that it's been added to the source code, it appears to be imminent, and I believe this version will be able to be ordered on Tesla's website sometime in the near future. So now that potential buyers should have a new choice coming up very soon when they order a Model Y, just how does this 4680 equipped Model Y version compare to the 2170 equipped versions? I'm John, and this is Cleanerwatt. After reading this Electrek article, which I have linked below, I spent some time scouring the source code of Tesla's design studio for the Model Y, and I was able to verify that indeed the 279-mile all-wheel drive variant does appear in the design studio source code. In addition, I was also able to find a few other interesting details in this source code that I want to share with you before we dive into other aspects of comparison. Like, for instance, the MSRP was embedded in the source code, the fact that there's going to be a 5 and 7 seat version of this Model Y, and also the EPA range for the various wheel and seat configurations. Now, first of all, let's talk about a range comparison between these variants, because range is a very important factor when purchasing an electric vehicle. Now, we can look at the EPA ranges for just, say, the most efficient version, and that's one way to look at it. But there are a little bit of range changes depending on which configuration you get. For instance, you lose a little bit of range with bigger wheels, and you lose a little bit of range when it comes to moving from the 5-seat configuration to the 7-seat configuration. For instance, in Tesla's source code, I found indications that they plan to offer a 5 and 7-seat version of the Model Y, but as you can see, there is a 4-mile range drop if you move from the 5-seat to the 7-seat configuration with 19-inch wheels, and the same goes with when you move to 20-inch wheels. The EPA range for the 5-seat version of the standard range all-wheel drive Model Y goes to 269 miles of range, and the 7-seat configuration goes down to 265 miles of range. You can see there how that compares to the long-range all-wheel drive model, which has over 300 miles of range for each one of these configurations. It's also important to note when it comes to electric vehicle range that real-world range is lower in colder temperatures and extreme hot temperatures, and the EPA ratings, while they are more accurate than, say, some of the other driving cycles like the European driving cycles and the ones that are used in China, when it really comes down to it, they're not real world estimates, because the real world estimates for most electric vehicles are a bit lower than the EPA ratings. So when you combine factors like a little bit lower range during winter temperatures, also a little bit lower during highway driving versus city driving for an electric vehicle, a little bit of battery degradation, and the fact that you should only charge them up to, say, like 90%. This really leads me to say that if you can afford it, you probably want to purchase the longest range version of the Model Y that you can afford that still meets your need. Now, I do want to point out that there is a price difference between these Model Y variants. So if price is a big issue, and if price is more important than your range, then of course that is one good reason to move over to the standard range all-wheel drive Model Y when it does become available. Now, when it comes to the source code, once again, I've seen many articles reporting that this standard range all-wheel drive MSRP is $61,990 before you add the delivery fee. However, as I went through the source code, I couldn't find that number, but I did find a price of $60,990 listed for an all-wheel drive Model Y. So based on this source code right now, it appears like when this version is added to the Tesla website, it'll be about $5,000 cheaper than the long-range all-wheel drive version. With that being said, however, I do think there's a very strong possibility that we could see some price changes to Tesla's vehicles in the somewhat near future for really two big reasons. The first reason comes down to the structure of the US government's EV incentive plan, which we'll talk about, and the second comes down to several economic factors that are at play right now. When it comes to the US EV tax credit, on December 30th, the IRS issued a list of vehicles that qualify for the federal EV tax credit. And while some of this will change in the future when battery material sourcing guidelines are all hashed out and they figure all that out, you can see here that they've listed the Model Y variants and their respective MSRP limits. And as many people have pointed out, the 5-seat versions of the Model Y are not classified in the higher SUV MSRP limit category, and thus they only have a $55,000 limit for qualification. Oddly enough, though, as it sits right now, the 7-seat version of the Model Y does qualify for the $80,000 limit. Because of this, I believe it would make a lot of sense for Tesla to bring the price of this 279-mile all-wheel drive variant of the Model Y. I believe it would make a lot of sense for them to bring that down below that $55,000 threshold. But even if they don't do that, at the very least, like I said earlier, in the source code, Tesla provides an EPA mileage for a 7-seat version of this Model Y, so it should offer a 7-seat version, meaning that worst case scenario, Tesla doesn't drop the price. It still should qualify in the 7-seat configuration for the EV tax credit. So beyond the EV tax credit situation, which I believe could lead to lower Model Y prices in the future, there are also some economic pressures right now that I believe could drive Tesla's prices down as well. Elon Musk recently took part in a Twitter Spaces chat that was recorded by the Halter Ferguson Financial YouTube channel. And in that chat, Elon Musk made some interesting comments about how the rising interest rates and the economic woes are diminishing global demand, and how Tesla will likely respond in a lower demand environment. On that topic, here's what Elon Musk had to say. So now, the obvious choice in that scenario is, do you want to grow unit volume, in which case you'll have to adjust the prices downward, or do you want to grow at a lower rate or grow steady? My bias would be to say like, okay, let's grow as fast as we can without putting the company at risk, which would mean profits would be low to negative during a recession, provided the cash position is okay. So due to these two factors, I think there's a very strong possibility that the prices of the Model Y and the Model 3, for that matter as well, could come down in the coming months and as we move through 2023. But nonetheless, no matter how the price is adjusted, it appears like this standard range all-wheel drive variant will likely be a bit cheaper than the long-range all-wheel drive variant, because that only makes sense. And let's just assume that that price stays always around a $5,000 difference between these variants. Is it worth a $5,000 savings to go with this standard range all-wheel drive 4680 equipped Model Y? First of all, I think it's important to point out that when it comes to the visual appearance of the 4680 equipped Model Y versus the 2170 equipped Model Y, they have the same exterior appearance and the same interior appearance. While Tesla is constantly adding small little tweaks to their vehicles, like for instance, the Austin-built Model Y has the addition of a cargo shelf cover, whereas the previous Fremont builds did not, and they're always adding little small tweaks to their vehicles. Generally speaking, if you were to look at a version of the Model Y, you wouldn't be able to tell visually if it's a 4680 equipped Model Y or a 2170 equipped Model Y. The main indicator would be if it has a 279-mile range when fully charged, or if it has a longer range, like say a 330-mile range with 2170 batteries. Is it a long-range all-wheel drive model, or is it just an all-wheel drive model? That would be your indication. However, when it comes down to the changes, there are some changes underneath the skin that really change some important factors about the vehicle, which we'll talk about. Now, as we go through these comparisons, I think it's important when you're looking at an electric vehicle, especially when you're looking at a different version of the same vehicle, same features, just a range difference and a price difference. It's important, I think, that we do a cost per mile of range comparison to see which vehicle gives you more miles of range for every dollar that you spend on that vehicle. And I call this a cost per mile of range calculation. As it sits right now, if you do the math and you divide the cost of the vehicle by the amount of range that you get, you can see that the long-range all-wheel drive version of the Model Y does appear to be a better value, and you actually get more range for your dollar. When it comes to an efficiency comparison between the Model Y variants, according to fueleconomy.gov, the standard range all-wheel drive variant of the Model Y is very slightly more efficient than the long-range all-wheel drive variant, but with all things considered, it's pretty much the same with only a very slight difference there, a 1 mile per gallon equivalent difference. When it comes to a charging speed comparison between these vehicles, I and others theorized in the past that due to the nature of how the 4680 battery is constructed and the tabless design, I and others theorized that this battery technology would allow for faster charging than the 2170 batteries. Well, so far that's not the case. It may be in the future, but so far that's not the case. And the data that we have right now shows that the 2170 equipped Model Y can actually charge just a little bit faster than the 4680 equipped version. It's not a drastic difference, and likely a lot of this is due to the fact that the 4680 equipped Model Y does have a smaller battery pack, which we'll talk about, which does affect the amount of charge in kilowatts that can actually be pushed into that battery at various points in the charging cycle. But nonetheless, the 2170 equipped Model Y does charge a bit faster. Another important factor to point out, and while this may seem obvious, I think it's important that we point this out. The 4680 equipped Model Y does have a smaller battery pack than the 2170 equipped Model Y when it comes to battery capacity. For instance, the Model Ys manufactured here in North America that have 2170 Panasonic cylindrical batteries, those vehicles have roughly an 82 kilowatt hour battery pack, and that pack is made up of around 4,416 individual battery cells. On the flip side, the 4680 equipped Model Y has a battery pack with a capacity that is about 10 kilowatt hours less than the long-range all-wheel drive and the performance variant with 2170 batteries. Now, do note that I expect that in the future, as Tesla moves to their Generation 2 and Generation 3 4680 batteries, for instance, they should see an increase in energy density, which I believe in the future will lead to a longer range 4680 equipped Model Y. And very likely in just a year or two, we'll see an energy capacity with the same 828 battery cells. We'll see an energy capacity for the Model Y somewhere in that 82 kilowatt hour range with 4680 batteries. And that will, of course, make that vehicle range-wise on par with the long-range all-wheel drive that we have right now. Another thing to point out when it comes to the Model Y variants comes down to the curb weight. The performance all-wheel drive variant of the Model Y is, of course, the heaviest at 4,398 pounds, the long-range all-wheel drive variant at 4,363 pounds, and this standard range 4680 equipped Model Y is just ever so slightly lighter than that long-range all-wheel drive version at 4,356 pounds. Now, everything that I've talked about so far, while those are important factors, I think what a lot of people really want to know is the Model Y with 4680 batteries that is manufactured at Gigafactory, Texas, is that vehicle in other ways superior to the other versions of the Model Y with 2170 batteries or the versions of the Model Y that are built at Tesla's Fremont factory, for instance? Which Model Y variant is better, and what's the difference between them when it comes to actual use, handling, customer experience, etc.? Well, I did some research and I found a couple YouTube videos with people giving their opinion, owners of the 4680 equipped Model Y giving their opinion, and I'd like to share a few things that I gleaned from these owners. For instance, the YouTube channel Spoken Reviews did a 1,000-mile review of their 4680 equipped Model Y. And in this video, it was mentioned that there were no issues with road noise, that this Model Y was also quieter than a Model 3 that was previously driven, and there were no rattles while driving. In addition, according to this owner's opinion, the Model Y had great build quality, which they rated 10 out of 10. This same channel also put out a 10,000-mile review a little bit later, And it was mentioned that they had no complaints thus far with the 10,000 miles they'd driven with the Model Y. And also, it was mentioned that the real world range going highway speeds was closer to around 225 to 230 miles in their 10,000 miles of experience. I also found a video on the Hey It's Tim YouTube channel. And this particular owner has two Model Ys, one that was built at Fremont and one that was built in Giga, Texas with 4680 batteries. And in this video, it was mentioned that this 4680 equipped Model Y had, in their words, perfect build quality with no paint blemishes. With that being said, I believe that really leads us into some technical aspects that I want to talk about of why a structural battery pack equipped Model Y should handle it a little better and really probably provide a bit of a better ride versus a 2170 equipped non-structural pack. When it comes to a structural pack, it's exactly what it sounds like. It actually is part of the structure of the vehicle. And as you can see, as Tesla makes this pack, they have the seat rails connected directly to the pack, and that actually gets bolted up into the bottom of the Model Y, and that forms the bottom layer of the Model Y, versus with a traditional vehicle, you have the chassis components, and then the battery is then bolted up on top of that. So it's a completely different approach to that. And as an added benefit to the design, apparently this gives the Model Y a stiffer, better feel while driving. Here's Elon Musk discussing the technical reasons why a structural battery pack Model Y should handle better than a non-structural pack version of the vehicle.
Instead of having just a filler that is a flame retardant, which is currently what is in the 3-in-Y battery packs, we have a filler that is a structural adhesive, as well as flame retardant. So it effectively glues the cells to the top and bottom sheet. And this allows you to do shear transfer between the upper and lower sheet. Just like if you have like a Formula One craft or like a racing boat, and you have carbon fiber face sheets and say aluminum honeycomb between them, this gives you incredible stiffness, and it's really the way that any super fast thing works. Is you create a basically a honeycomb sandwich with two face sheets. We can actually use the steel shell case of the battery to transfer shear from the upper and lower face sheet, which makes for an incredibly stiff structure, even stiffer than a regular car. Those castings are also quite important because you want to transfer load into the structural battery pack in a very smooth, continuous way, so you don't put arbitrary point loads into the battery. So you kind of have to, you want to sort of feather the load out from the front and rear into the structural battery. It also allows us to use to move the cells closer to the center of the car. It also proves what's called the polar moment of inertia, which is that you can think of like when there's a ice skater, arms out or arms in. Arms in, you rotate faster. So if you can bring things closer to the center, you reduce the polar moment of inertia, and that means the car maneuvers better. It just feels better. You don't want to know why, but it just feels more agile.
So now that we've talked about some of the major differences between these Model Y variants, and I've talked about the reasons why I believe that this 4680 equipped Model Y will be more widely available in the near future, I want to now talk about and cover the topic of how many of these 4680 equipped Model Ys will Tesla actually be able to build right now. What is the manufacturing capacity of, say, Gigafactory Texas, where these vehicles are being built right now? And how many 4680 batteries is Tesla able to manufacture right now to build these Model Ys? Well, when it comes to the manufacturing capacity of Gigafactory Texas, the official Tesla Twitter account recently announced on December 18th that Gigafactory Texas was able to build 3,000 Model Ys in a single week. However, from what I can tell, it appears like the majority of these Texas-built Model Ys have been equipped with 2170 batteries and not 4680 batteries. But as we've been talking about, I believe that's going to change in the somewhat near future, and we're going to see a lot more 4680 equipped Model Ys being built out of this factory. One of those reasons comes down to the fact that Tesla has gotten their 4680 battery production ramp to what is a little less than I would have hoped, and definitely way less than what they had hoped they would get to back in 2020 when they talked about the 4680 batteries. But nonetheless, according to the official Tesla Twitter account, once again, Tesla recently was able to produce 868,000 4680 battery cells in a single 7-day period, which according to my calculation should be enough to build somewhere around 150 Model Ys per day. And if you extrapolate that run rate out, that would be somewhere around 1,048 Model Ys per week, or an annual rate of around 54,000 and some Model Ys per year. Hopefully these 4680 numbers improve in the future, but as it sits right now, if Gigafactory Texas is able to build roughly 3,000 Model Ys in a week, that means they could potentially be building 1/3 of the vehicles coming out of that factory with 4680 batteries. Now, when it comes to what Tesla has been doing with the 4680 batteries that they've been manufacturing thus far, I have not been able to find out how many 4680 equipped Model Ys Tesla built in 2022, but it does appear like Tesla is stocking up on structural battery packs based on Gigafactory Texas drone images shared by Joe Tegmeyer on Twitter. And I believe Tesla is storing up these battery packs for when they officially bring online this variant to the Tesla ordering page and allow customers to actually order this variant. I believe that's going to happen in the near future, and that Tesla wants to stock up battery packs and get ready for that demand surge. So really when it comes down to wrap all this up, there are some positive reasons to go with the 4680 equipped Model Y over Tesla's other variants, like for instance, possibly a little bit better build quality and some features like that, and maybe a little bit better ride and a little better handling. But the fact is that Tesla's other vehicles handle great. And it's not like the 2170 equipped Model Ys don't handle very well. And also, as I mentioned, since the 2170 equipped Model Ys do offer more range and a little bit faster charging speed, that's something to consider. And when it comes down to value, the long-range all-wheel drive Model Y does offer a little bit better value when it comes to how much you pay for every mile of range. But it is exciting to have a structural pack in your Model Y, and I think it still is a great choice. And if you're looking to save a little bit of money, the 4680 equipped Model Y is a great vehicle, and it's definitely one that I would consider if I was in the market right now to purchase one. I don't know which one I'd choose at the moment. I would probably lean toward the longer range version of the Model Y, but $5,000 of savings is really important. And especially if Tesla is able to drop the price of this Model Y variant to qualify for the EV incentive from the US government, that would also make a big difference as well and could drive huge demand for this vehicle. Do let me know what you think about all this in the comments section below. I'd love to hear from you. And also, I want to thank the Patreon supporters who support me every month and help make this content possible. A special thank you to my performance supporters and also the other supporters listed on the screen. If you'd like to find out more about the Patreon community I've set up, I'll put a link in the video description. Thank you so much.